when we first started with when the children came to us, obviously the one came 2 years after the other one because they're not related, but we found some resources on the internet, and we started doing these gingerbread men, like colouring them in, and using words like emotional words like happy, sad. They're the first two that you always start with, I think, because children seem to know what they mean when they. So you coloured the gingerbread man in certain colours that reflected how you felt if you were happy, and where the feelings were on your body when you're feeling happy, and the same with the sad. And then we eventually introduced different words like excited and miserable, and and then they got more complex, the words. We're colouring them in and having a little discussion after we've coloured them in, but first of all setting the rule that when one person's talking, they can talk, and if that's how they feel, that's how they feel. Even if you feel different, that's still how they feel, and you've got to respect how they feel. But when it comes to your turn, you can tell us that you feel different. And I think that's how we first introduced it, was through doing little activities like that.
I think for us it's picking your moment, it's that picking your time. You can't just sit down and have a conversation with them in a formal setting. It's got to be, ours is quite random, I think. We might walk the dogs a lot and we'll end up talking about some amazing things, but that's usually when they're sort of maybe for us, when they're in a more relaxed environment, that we can start talking about things more openly, about how they're feeling. We usually do, sometimes we do 1 to 10, how are you feeling today? Oh, well, I'm a 5 today, or I'm a 1 today. So sometimes if I know they're going to be difficult, but I think it's not so much talking to them, it's just picking that moment in time where they feel that they can talk about how they're feeling. And it's usually, sometimes in the car. We often have some crazy conversations in the car, but you can't force them. You can't sit down and say like this and say, right, how are you feeling today? Because that just won't happen. And with our eldest one, when she says no, she means yes. When she says yes, she means no, because she finds it difficult to talk about her feelings. So you learn to read sometimes in between the lines. That's what works for us.
Yeah, when we were doing when we were colouring the gingerbread men in, it's also important that the adults in the house were doing it as well, so the children recognise that everybody has these feelings, and we made sure that we did cover feelings like anger, and it's fine to feel angry about something. Maybe it's the way that sometimes we deal with anger, such as throwing a chair at somebody. That's not okay. But it's okay to feel angry, and that we all do it. Even the adults in the house can feel angry and feel sad, and all these emotions are normal for people to have. It's normal to feel jealous, even though it's looked down upon as something, oh, terrible, you're so jealous. But everybody has that feeling at some time, and that's fine to have them feelings, and that is normal. Yeah.
I think we've always used words like muddly and kind of not friendly words, I suppose, and quite not scary words, I think, not overwhelming. So we talk about muddles a lot, and the children can kind of identify, sometimes they'll just come out with it and just say, oh, I had science today, and the new science teacher, you can tell they understand muddles, and so they can pick out the adults who can get it and who don't get it, and I think I've always been really open with them, talking about it and talking about muddles, and I acknowledge to them all the time that I'm kind of in awe that they are stronger people than me, that the strength they've got, that they plod through their little lives having to deal with muddles all the time, that I kind of let them know how amazing they are, and also it kind of, you don't want them to feel different, but you need to let them know that, because they do feel different to other people, so you need to kind of acknowledge that. And yeah, it is, not everyone has to do all of school and navigate this, what you're navigating, so it's kind of acknowledging it to them as well. And you can tell when they need to talk about it, but you can also tell when it's not suitable. We used to do a thing with the boys when they were really small, in kind of key stage 1, and they would draw. It was all withdrawing. We, from right the way through the primary years, I've had on my kitchen table like a huge big pot of big like carousel of pens, pencils and paper, and drawing. It was the best therapy for mine when they were really, really small. And my middle boy used to draw the different, looked like different little monsters that were inside of him. And that one would make him look like he was being cheeky by sticking his tongue out in class and doing silly things and tipping the paint over. And sometimes he was really hard to stop, you know, and he knew all these different, and they were just, he was identifying the different feelings or the different moods that he would be in. And I think normalised it. I think we did a good job of normalising it to them. Like, this is just how, you know, this is what happens when you've got blonde hair and blue eyes, and this, it was just like a part of who they were, because they are going to have to deal with this all of their lives. I think they'll get a good control of it, but they'll have to deal with it all their lives. But I think using words that aren't scary. And as well, like for grandparents or wider family, if you say, oh, she's feeling a little bit muddly today, or he's in a bit of a muddle, people kind of understand that a little bit, like, oh, right, okay. And it makes them a bit, you know, I think a little bit more aware. So I think it's a really good word to use.
Yeah, and we use that word.
Mm-hmm.
Muddles or wobbly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we use them words. As our children got older, though, we started being a bit more scientific with them, because they enjoy that and learning about the brain and the development of the brain, and how some things can maybe go a little bit off with your brain, and, you know, talking honestly about attachment, what attachment is, and what strategies some people use with attachment. And I've got a granddaughter as well, who they've seen as a baby and grow up and understand what a good attachment is and how that can change. Because obviously, like, when you're getting to 16, you've got to prepare the children for adult life. I mean, some things we're expected to do are way beyond where they're at the minute. You know, for fostering, you're expected to do all sorts, them to be so independent. But I think to prepare them in certain ways is a good idea, so they learn about, like, the structure of the brain, and, you know, like, where different thoughts come from. And we've started doing that now, and they really get, I mean, the youngest one actually sent an email to all her teachers explaining to them that she has developmental trauma, and what developmental trauma is. She put an attachment on so they could read more if they wanted to. And you might see me as this, and this is how to deal with me, and I think that's really worked, because she's got a good understanding of it. That really works for her now, you know, because she understands, like, it's not because she's crazy or anything. It's because something...
It takes the fear away from them, doesn't it?
I think once they get to a certain age, they need it to be normalised, and they need that little bit more. And if they can go and look it up on the internet at appropriate sites, or read it in a book and explain it to a teacher, it takes that fear away, that, oh, there is something abnormal about us. It's not about being abnormal. You have something a little bit different about you, and this is why you work like this. And if these adults can understand that, they can probably help you more, and it just takes it down quite a few levels. But obviously you have to wait until they're at the right level of understanding to do that.
And if there is things on the internet about it, and there's been studies being done about it, well, then it's not just you that it's happening to, because the fact that it's been written in books means that it's happened to lots of people, and that's how they know what it is, that's how they can give it a name. So that, I think that makes them feel a bit more in power. And then,
oh, definitely, yeah. The more knowledge they've got about it, the more power, the more in control of it they are.
Yeah.
We've started to talk to them more about the brain as they've got older, and a little bit about what happens during pregnancy when alcohol is consumed, and what that does to the brain, so that they can understand kind of scientifically, because they're clever kids, that for all of them it's kind of been like a bit of a right, that's why that happens. You know, your brain works in a different way when it comes to telling the time. Because my eldest son got upset last year, and he said that he felt like he used to be able to tell the time better than he can now, and he felt like he had dementia. And that really stopped me in my tracks, because I thought that it must be so scary inside his head. That must be terrifying. So I thought I need to explain to him why this is happening, and that you can find just different routes around it that just take a little bit longer, so that it's just a different way, and so that his brain's more creative in other ways to a person that it hasn't happened to. And that, I think, honesty, you've got to pick your times to be honest, but you reach the point where you have to be, otherwise they will start to imagine something that's way worse than the reality, I think.
yeah, I mean, a lot of parents do talk to the children about the physical changes that the bodies go through as they get older and as they develop, but we never talk about how the brain develops and how the brain changes. And I think that's probably what we need to start doing a bit more, is talking about that.